Welcome to the Urban Wine Club podcast. Pour a glass, sit back, and enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this very, very special event that we're doing tonight. I just want to make a few points. I'm keeping everybody muted and videos off, but we will, towards the end, allow people to join in on the conversation. But until then, if you could use the chat box for any questions, any comments, anything like that, we will be monitoring that. And again, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it right over to my co-host, and he is going to introduce this wonderful event with some very, very wonderful people. Thank you so much for joining. And Foti, how are you?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ari. As always, on behalf of the Urban Wine Club, we'd like to thank everyone who is joining us, all of our special guests, all of our participants. For us, it's always an honor to be hosting these virtual events. Thanks to the pandemic, we had to shift gears from in-person, but thankfully with virtual events, we've been able to host quite a bit of events in such a short time frame and got to meet a lot of great people. And having said that, in this segment, we are very honored to have the guest with us this evening. So in honor of Women's History Month, it's so appropriate and ideal to have this special event with us, with the guests that are participating. I wanted to acknowledge who's joining us tonight because we're paying tribute to an amazing young woman who started a company that I'm just a big fan of and what she's doing, which we'll get to know pretty soon. But I want to acknowledge our guests first before we get started. I'm going to acknowledge Madena Mohamadi, who is the founder of JAHAN. I also want to acknowledge and thank LaToya Harris-Allen, who is the Director of Development for an amazing organization, Women for Women International, who took the time to be with us based on her busy schedule. This is an honor to have her as well with us. And as always, our dear friend who hails from France but happens to be in Massachusetts, our friend Nathan Derri, who is the district manager of Dreyfus and Ashby, who is responsible for the wonderful wines we're about to enjoy this evening and part of the experience. And we want you to enjoy this, sit back, relax, get to learn more about the products of JAHAN, get to learn more about Women for Women International, and obviously the wines. But before we get into it, I'm going to turn it over to LaToya, who will tell us a little bit more about their amazing organization. LaToya.
Well, first, thank you, Foti and Ari with the Urban Wine Club and our partners, Madena and JAHAN, for welcoming me tonight. I'm excited to be here with you all and have the opportunity to share the work of Women for Women International. March 8th was International Women's Day, and we celebrated with a month-long Power to Change campaign aimed at creating a world that is more equal, peaceful, and prosperous for women everywhere. So it's fitting that tonight we're going to be pairing these beautiful wines with spices from JAHAN, a woman-owned Afghan spice company that is using their platform to raise funds and awareness for women's rights in Afghanistan. So Madena will be sharing more about her story and her spices in a few, but I want to tell you a little bit more about the work that we're doing at Women for Women. So with the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan and now the war in Ukraine, we're reminded why our mission at Women for Women International is so important. We believe that women have the power to transform their own lives, but when they're undervalued, they lose this power. Conflict and war deepens this injustice. A woman who survives violent conflict is then forced to rebuild their lives in community where her voice and her needs are put last. So we at Women for Women, we invest in regions where inequality and poverty are the greatest. We invest in women survivors of war and conflict. We connect them with each other so they realize their own power. We enroll women in our signature program. It's called Stronger Women, Stronger Nations, where they learn together. They learn how to save money. They learn how to build businesses. They understand their rights. They learn how to improve their health. They change society rules by learning how to advocate for themselves. And our data shows that the women who are learning these skills, they pass on that knowledge to their family and their communities, to others in their communities. So this causes this ripple effect, and it brings about this sustainable change. So that's the power of women for women. in August 2021, Taliban forces took control of Kabul. And at Women for Women, we adapted our programs to meet the needs of women to serve the changing constraints in which they live. That's a part of our DNA. That's what we do. When Kabul fell, we called on our supporters to stand in solidarity with Afghan women. And we raised more than $5 million to help rebuild the lives of women we serve in Afghanistan. And with that support, we provided kitchen garden and poultry kits to address widespread food insecurity and hunger. We provided psychological support to women in our program who were struggling with trauma and mental health challenges. Our training centers recently reopened last month, and to date, we have enrolled and deliver our 12-month Stronger Woman, Stronger Nation program to over 250 women in Nangarhar. And we restarted our stipend distributions. We're one of the few organizations to overcome the region's cash flow challenges. So Women for Women is close to securing a final government approval to resume work in Parwan, which we plan to serve 200 women to participate in that program as well. So things have been far from easy, and negotiations with the new government have been complicated and scary. And the country is still suffering from major food crisis and political instability. And women, although they are fearful for their lives and, they're scared for, their future, they're still making the journey to Women for Women international centers because of the lifeline that we provide them. And they know that the trainings, the stipends, and the social support networks that they are forming are key to a brighter future for them, despite the immense challenges that they face. So if you've been inspired by what you hear tonight and you want to get involved, there are a few things that you can do. You can, of course, visit us at our website, womenforwomen.org, or on our social media. Check out our stories, see what we do, see how we operate. And if you are able and inspired to give, the most impactful way is for you to commit a one-time gift or a reoccurring monthly donation. Our donation link is in the chat. You can make a donation on our website. So now I'm going to pass it on to Madena so she can share her spices and her story.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, LaToya. And I just want to start off with saying how much of an honor it is to not only be able to partner with you from Women for Women, Foti and Ari from Urban Wine Club, and Nathan here, but this is my first event. So being able to partner with you all is just incredible. I just want to thank you first. And thank you for all the participants for joining us today. So I will just start off with an introduction. My name is Madena Mohamadi. I am an Afghan American who was born here in the U.S. in the year 1990. And I was born to two parents, Jahanya and Akbar Mohamadi, who moved to the U.S. in 1988 during the Soviet invasion in Afghanistan. So they were forced to leave their homes with my older siblings and move to an entirely new country and figure out the right balance between assimilating our family into a Western culture while also holding on to their own Afghan culture, preserving the language, and making sure that my siblings and I were growing up and holding on to the traditions that they grew up with. So two very, very important pieces of my culture that they held on to and just made sure that I grew up with every day in my home was our language and our food. Food was just the warmest and just most inviting way to be able to hold on to that like beautiful piece of our culture. I grew up every day eating Afghan food. When we would go out to eat, I was really fortunate to grow up in a really large Afghan American community in the U.S. in Northern Virginia, which unfortunately I don't have up here in Boston, but I'll get to that a little later. So I was able to grow up eating and helping my mom and my grandma cook Afghan food. Things like kebab, that was always my favorite growing up, just really delicious rice, kabuli, which is a very fancy rice that has raisins and carrots and just so many different dishes that are not really accessible to most homes in the United States and most communities in the United States. So fast forward several years, I won't say exactly how many years later, to me moving to Boston and not really having Afghan food readily available to me. So during the pandemic, I wasn't able to travel to visit my family as often as I would have liked. Actually, I wasn't able to at all for about a year and a half, to keep both them and myself safe. And so I started FaceTiming my mom and learning exactly how to cook the food that we would cook together growing up. I never really, as a child, learned the secret recipes of like the different spice blends. Like I knew how to put the dumplings together and knew how to kind of form the food, but I didn't really appreciate how important the spice blends were when we were cooking together as a child. So in Boston, trying to figure this out over FaceTime, trying to figure out exactly what a pinch of ground coriander means, or just throw a handful of this and try it and see if it's right. And figuring out also just where can I buy some of these ingredients? Like, I don't know about you, but I personally have no idea which store in Boston sells black cumin seeds. I don't think I've ever seen it. I would have my mom ship it to me, or I'd buy it online. And I also live in a very tiny apartment with a really, really small kitchen. So being able to find the space for like a dozen or so different spices that you need just for one dish is not really sustainable for most people, I think. So that's how I came up with the idea of JAHAN. I was cooking for my friends, and while trying to like explain how they can make it on their own and explain where they can find all the ingredients and the raw ingredients that they need and how to blend it together and in what proportions they would need to blend it together, I just figured like I should package this. There is such a huge need on the market for this. You go into like a regular supermarket and what they call like an ethnic aisle, where they just group together everything that is not considered American food into one aisle. And it's like mostly Goya, and there's absolutely nothing from Afghanistan or Central Asia, actually. So there's clearly a need for it. Even just within my friend group, most of them had never had the privilege of experiencing Afghan flavors before, and they absolutely loved it. And I knew I had to figure out a way to make this accessible, to also reframe and bring a new lens to Afghanistan. And instead of having people think of conflict or something that's negative, they can think of something that's so beautiful, which is our food. And to also raise awareness about the dire need for humanitarian aid for Afghanistan. I realized that with my upbringing, although my parents went through such hardship and coming to the US and being forced from their homes, that I did grow up with a privilege. I was able to go to school. I was able to take advantage of many opportunities that my mother wasn't able to. My grandma definitely wasn't able to. And so many Afghan women in Afghanistan, or refugees who were forced to leave Afghanistan in the past several years, just have not been able to take advantage of or have never had these opportunities. So I knew if I was going to ever build a business where I was sharing something about my culture, I absolutely need to give back. And there is just no way for me to operate without having some sort of humanitarian aid component. And that's what brought me to Women for Women, which is such an incredible organization. The impact that they make all over the world is just astounding. And also just knowing that when I give to them, I can trust them with my money, and I can trust that they are going to use it in programs that actually are able to make an impact and help women in several different countries that are in dire need at this moment. Also, just very recently, seeing how quickly they were able to shift some of their programs to be able to meet the need in Ukraine, and be able to do so so effectively and really just so quickly is amazing. So again, I'm honored to be able to do this. I'm honored to be able to share my story while also partnering with an incredible organization. And hopefully this will just spread and will spread awareness about the need for Afghanistan, even as it falls out of the news cycle again. You know, it comes in and out over the years with every major event that happens. You're not seeing as much anymore, or as much as you did in August. And yeah, we'll continue to speak about the need and inspire people to give where it's needed. Yeah, and I can move on to the food, I think, after we speak a little bit about the wine.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Madena, and thank you so much, Latoya. Commend you both on your endeavors and how this all came about with your project, Madena. And you mentioned something about, growing up in a ethnic culture where, your grandparents or your parents have recipes to their dishes, but how often do they write them down?
Oh, gosh.
and everyone has their own version. So it's basically what you mentioned, a pinch of this and a pinch of that, and then there you go. But you're able to transform and take these recipes and create these wonderful blends that individuals like myself and Nathan and Ari too as well. We take a lot of pride into the way food is presented and prepared. So you hear about food and wine pairing. So it's not so much about the category of food that we look into, but we take more into consideration the preparation, the ingredients, the spices, the cooking methods. That's really what drives the pairing. So the way that you've blended your spices, each individual selection, in my opinion, is amazing because you bring so many different flavors together, but in a very eloquently balanced format. The same thing I can say about the wines that Nathan will speak about. For us, it's all about balance. Everything is about balance. And here we find this great harmony of balance of your spices with the balance of the wine. And we should also consider the fact that the roots of a lot of today's cuisine, European cuisine, stems from the spice root that originated from your neck of the woods in Afghanistan, in the Middle East, in Asia. That really is what transforms today's cuisines in France, in Italy, in Greece, in Spain, right? Nathan, I'm sure you can speak a little more about French cuisine and how a lot of the preparations and ingredients and spices were from the roots of Afghanistan as well. So, there's a lot of culture and history here that we can discuss, but more importantly is we want to talk about, the creations you put together and why they're so fabulous. And then Nathan can talk about why the wines that he chose are so fabulous with the presentation you're going to put today with your spice. I think you have some food prepared as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I do. And it smells delicious. So hopefully it survives over the next few minutes.
So before we get into the actual different spices, I wanted to bring on Nathan to give a little introduction about himself, the wineries that he represents, and the two wines that we're going to explore this evening. Nathan?
Thank you very much, Foti and Ari, for hosting. Madena, amazing, your journey into the world of entrepreneurship and the whole story that you developed is just so touching and moving. And obviously, Latoya, amazing organization. So I'm really proud to be here tonight. I just wanted to have a couple of words about Madena's presentation because every single sentence that Madena brought to the audience tonight, the word like food and culture, the word balance, the word blending, all of those terms are the terms that I use in my day-to-day operation. And the food and the wine, obviously, everybody's talking about food and wine pairing, but there's all the background of the wine. And what Madena is doing with the spices, the winemaker in France all over the world are doing the same exact job. You're blending spices, they are blending grapes. So I'm really lucky to work for that company. So as Foti said, I work for Dreyfus Ashby. We import wine from all over the world. The company is owned by the Dreyfus family, and the wine that the audience hopefully have tonight are two wines from the Dreyfus family. I also represent a bunch of other wineries from all around the world. The key thing for my company is to feature wines that are family-owned and family-run wineries only. So there's a bunch of actors in the world of wines. There's big corporation, and those guys are doing jewelry and perfumes and handbags and also wines sometimes. This is not what we are trying to represent here. What we are trying to represent here is families, individuals that are trying to make the best wine with the base product, which is grapes, that they have. And we, Fodi and I and Ari as well, selected those two wines tonight because when he told me the project of Madena with JAHAN, I was like, great. So the food pairing with spices, it's extremely complicated, first of all. But on top of that, I wanted to bring extra components. So we talked about the Women's History Month, and I have a couple of words to say. So the place of women in the world of wine and winemaking before the 70s all over the world, and especially in France, women were not really allowed to make wine. The only 2 times in history in France where women were allowed to work in the vineyard and made wine were between 1914 and 1918, and between 1940 and 1945. And that was literally because the men were going to war. So nobody was there to work the vineyard. And that's the only 2 times in history where women were in charge of the winery and the winemaking process. And I think it's really sad because now we have so many wonderful women winemakers all over the world. The Drouin family were the very first big names in France who hired a female winemaker back in the 70s. And she stayed the head winemaker of the Drouin family all the way until Véronique Drouin, which is one of the 4 kids of the owner of the winery, took over the position of head winemaker. So since the 70s, the Drouin family, all the wines from the Drouin family in France and in Oregon have been made by female winemakers. So that's one of the very first points that I wanted to broaden. That's why those wines were selected. The other thing is the blending component. So I've done a bunch of presentation about Burgundy. That's where my art stand. I love Burgundian wines, Bourgogne, Vin de Bourgogne. And for some of the people in the audience that I can recognize your name. So I know you already followed the Burgundy presentation. Burgundy for white is 99.9% Chardonnay, and Burgundy for red is 99.9% Pinot Noir. So all over the world, winemaker tends to try vintage after vintage to have consistency. That's also something that I'm sure Madena can rely. When she blends her spices, if she blends the spices on Monday, she wants to have the exact same blend on Tuesday and on Wednesday, and that's the consistency. What the winemakers are trying to do vintage after vintage is to have the same balance and consistency in the wine. And all over the world, you can cheat a little bit by blending different grape varietals. So if you go to Napa and you want to make a Napa Cab, everybody knows Napa Cab, you can cheat and add a little bit of different other varietals if the Cabernet, for so many reasons during that vintage, was not up to the code, or like if something went wrong, you can add other blends or other varietals. In Burgundy, by law, so the only way you can work on consistency is for the regional appellation to blend different plots or different areas. So you will have Chardonnay from Chablis, and Chardonnay from the Côte d'Or, and Chardonnay from the Mâconnais. It's all Chardonnay, but that's the way the winemaker will blend the grapes and try to work on consistency. And again, I'm not in the spice business. I love food and I love spices, but I'm sure, that's what you are doing on your day-to-day operation. You have a bunch of different spices coming from a bunch of different places, and your job as a spice blender, spice master, is to blend those and try to have the exact same product in every single package that you're going to put on the market. So the Chardonnay that you are enjoying tonight is, as I said, a blend of different areas. So Chablis, the Côte d'Or, which is the Côte de Nuit and the Côte de Beaune, mostly Côte de Beaune because there's almost no white in the Côte de Nuit, and some Mâconnais as well. The way this wine is made, everything is vinified separately. All the areas are vinified separately. The wine, the grapes from the Côte d'Or, we'll see a touch of old oak, no new oak at all. And Mâconnais and Chablisien are stainless steel. So that's also one of the tools that the winemaker have. They can use different vessels. In the case of that specific Chardonnay, a touch of old oak and the rest is stainless. The Pinot Noir, it's the exact same idea. So it's a regional appellation, Bourgogne or Burgundy, and the same criteria will apply, and you will blend at different areas all over Burgundy. So you will take some Pinot Noir from the northern part and some Pinot Noir from the middle part and Pinot Noir from the southern part. You will vinify it separately and you will blend. So I'm happy to answer any question on the wine. If you have any question, we can go to the chat box. Ari and
I definitely I would encourage all of our guests to ask questions. Let us know what you're thinking as you're sipping as well, because we're sipping as we're listening ourselves, just to get our palate going as we salivate with Madena's presentation of the food. Excellent, Nathan. To your point, this is interesting that most of our guests are not aware that when you talk about Burgundy as a region, most folks don't identify Burgundy, thinking that it's an actual wine, not a location. So Burgundy being a location, and that when you purchase or order a bottle of Burgundy that's white, it's going to be Chardonnay. And when you purchase a bottle of red that's from Burgundy, it's always Pinot Noir, by default. So hopefully some of our guests actually would be enlightened by that information if they did not know so. Again, the weather is changing, right? The weather is getting at least warmer for the most part, especially up here in the Boston area. I'm sure for those of you that are in the mid-Atlantic, it's a little better. So that calls for wines that are a little more refreshing, right? Whites that are refreshing and crisp, which this Chardonnay definitely has those components. And for our reds, Pinot Noir definitely hits the mark when weather gets a little warmer for a red. It's just nicely balanced, cooler, refreshing for a red as well. But why don't we have Madena let us know what's going on with the food so that we can sip and have some bites?
Yes, definitely. So I will start off with my favorite food group, which is carbs. So growing up, here, I'll tilt this. This is our rice made with our rustic rice blend. So growing up, rice was always a staple of pretty much every meal. And to be quite honest, I never actually partook in cooking rice because I feel like it was a sacred thing that only my mom would touch or only my grandma would touch. And it always just seemed like really complicated, very complex. And I just never thought that I would be able to recreate it on my own until I worked with my mom, JAHAN, creating our rustic rice blend. So it really just, with all three JAHAN products, all three SKUs, it just kind of takes the complexity out of cooking Afghan food. One pouch, I usually use it for 4 servings, and that's what I have on the packaging. But just from feedback from friends and different customers and family members, some people like to use a whole pouch for 4 servings. Some people like to just use a little bit on top of rice after they're done cooking, rather than using the whole pouch during the cooking process. So what I like to do is just pour the whole pouch with 4 cups of rice and cook it with the seasoning on the spice blend on the rice. And it's just this really nutty, like aromatic, really pretty floral scent and flavor. And it's delicious. And I think this one pairs well with both wines. But what we have here is our savory tandoori kebab salmon that I think tastes delicious with the Chardonnay. And we use our savory tandoori kebab blend. So this is, again, super easy to use. You just use a little bit of olive oil, pour the entire pouch on about like a pound of salmon. Cook it really however you'd like. Sometimes I just stick it in the air fryer when I am really low on time. And honestly, it comes out amazing every time. Or you can just put it in the oven, on the grill. You don't even, if you're low on time, you don't even need to marinate it for too long. I will sometimes do it just right before I put it in the air fryer. But if you'd like to really have that flavor kind of soak in and marinate, then you can leave it on for a couple of hours. So these are the 2 that I would use with this wine. And when we're ready to talk about the red, I can move on to our third blend.
We have a question for you.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, before we move on, while we're on the subject of rice, a question comes in. Please tell us, what are some of your favorite rices to cook with?
Oh, yes.
And the second part is, any rice wine suggestions for a lover of Asian dramas? So part 1, what are your favorite rices?
Okay, that second question might have to be for Nathan. I can't speak for an expert. But, for the first question, there is no wrong answer. I love all rice, but my favorite is basmati. And that's usually also like what I would eat growing up and what my mom would typically buy in these like massive bags of rice, since we would eat it every day. So usually basmati, sometimes cauliflower rice, since that's the new trend, and fake carbs. Sometimes with lentils, when I'm trying to get like a little more protein in. Those three are usually my most favorite things used with this blend.
Excellent.
I've also heard a customer has gotten back to me. They've used it with risotto. So that's a great option. Whatever you have on hand.
Oh, great. Okay. Thank you so much, Madena. And Nathan, could you give us any rice wine suggestions for a lover of Asian dramas or food?
Sake.
Absolutely. Well, that's a very good wine. Sake is actually wine made out of rice. So
nice.
That's a super easy pairing. I would say that there's no right or wrong wine pairing, and there's never any right or wrong wine pairing with any kind of food. I think it all depends on the spices that you're going to use in your rice. And you just have to find a balance between the tannins and the acidity of your wine to go with the spices. The spicier I would go the more tannic. So if you have something, and I'm not talking hot spicy, I'm just talking about spices in general. And the spicier the dish is, and the more complex with the blend of spices, the more tannin I will try to chase. So a Pinot Noir from Burgundy is great. Any kind of Northern Italian wines, that's going to be good as well. I'm sure, Foti, you have some idea of Greek.
Yeah, I mean, to Nathan's point, when he speaks of tannins, for those of us that are not familiar, basically the more bitter the wine is, the better that bitterness will counteract some of the reactions of the spices with the food. It almost kind of complements each other, because you can easily lose the flavor of the wine if the structure isn't there. So if there's not a presence of tannins in the wine, you can lose the flavor of the wine because of the lack of tannins, right? So if the food is prepared with an abundance of great spice flavor, and when Nathan makes that point, spice can sometimes be deceived with being hot. That doesn't necessarily mean spices can be a complexity of flavors. But even so, when there's heat in the spice blend too, tannins will be a good component to kind of balance out, so that you can taste the flavor of the food and taste the flavor of the wine. So that's important. And there's no right or wrong, but if you want to maximize the flavors of each component, food and wine, for the best experience, that's where we try to suggest the pairing this way. But wines with tannins is the key with food that have good spice incorporation.
Excellent. All right. Another comment was, thank you, Madena, inspired by your new venture.
Thank you.
We commend you. And now, if you want to move to the next one.
Yes. So with the Pinot Noir, as Nathan mentioned, something spicier would be better paired with a wine with more tannins. So what we have here is our ground beef kebab. Can you see this? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. That looks so good.
It smells really good. Hopefully one day when virtual reality technology I could give you a sample.
I was going to say, we have to figure out how we could ship the wine. We have to now figure out how to ship hot, fresh food as well, and then we'll have it all.
Or we can just meet in person.
Well, that's true too.
Okay. So this ground beef kebab was prepared with our spicy street kebab blend. This actually is my personal favorite. I use it on everything. So with all of our blends, you can really use it with, and it doesn't have to be with meat. You can be with any type of protein, any vegetable. This one I specifically love on eggplant. It's so delicious. I love it on lamb. I love it on ground beef. I love it on basically everything besides like dessert. I haven't gotten to that yet. Okay. So this one works really well on any sort of like plant-based meat. It has like a really tangy, kind of a little bit nutty flavor. And it just is, I think there are maybe, I should know this. There are about a dozen spices in this one. And it's just tastes so balanced. No one flavor is overpowering. Coriander is a star in this blend. There's coriander, there's some sumac, there is a lot of garlic, onion, just really distinct like Afghan flavors that are blended together. I grew up eating this with what we call chapli kebab. And we have a few recipes up on our website, eatjahan.com, but I'll definitely make sure to build that out over the next several weeks. So chapli kebab is a really, really popular traditional Pashtun kebab, and it's this ground beef patty. And we basically have recreated it here. Typically, it has a little bit of, if you're feeling like a little fanciful, you can add some shredded potato to it, some shredded onions, and whatever vegetables you want to the patty. But yeah, that's our spicy street kebab with the ground beef patties.
Madena, you mentioned that you can either prepare it during the prep process of your food, or you can actually top off the finished product.
Exactly. Or you can do both. If you're like me and you just love flavor.
All right.
Good option.
Awesome.
I like that idea.
So having said that, I know you just mentioned how you enjoyed both wines with the different pairings with the different foods, and it's pretty versatile where you can have one wine or the other with the different spices. Anyone in the audience have any other comments or feedbacks of what they're experiencing with the wine? Anything that they'd like to share with us? Latoya, can you give us, I know you've been sipping some wine, or you had sip on some wine. Any feedback from you on what your feedback would be with this experience?
They're all delicious.
Okay. Do you have a favorite?
Oh, I'm really partial to reds.
Okay.
I think that's really kind of my favorite, especially, I'm based in BC and it's really cold and rainy today. Mm-hmm. So, the red is warming me up today.
There you go. Excellent.
Perfect.
And I have a good news for you, Latoya, because that kind of wine, the Pinot Noir, you can enjoy it during the cold months, as I would, and you can also chill it a little bit during spring or summer and enjoy it a little bit cold. So not too cold, but just a little bit colder than what it is now. And it's great summer red wine as well.
Is that allowed to chill it a little bit? Chill a Pinot Noir?
Everything is allowed as long as you're fine with it. Everything is allowed. Our job, Foliari and I, is just to decomplexify the idea of wine. It's a beverage like every other beverage is, and you can do whatever with your wine, because at the end of the day, it's your wine. So if you want to drink it cold or warm, or it's your choice.
Right. I like that. You use the word complex.
I don't know.
I like it. I love it.
I'm going to do that.
And then to Nathan's point, there's a lot of, misconceptions. Sometimes I even look at it as we like to debunk the myths of wine and wine drinking, but it is recommended that when the weather is warmer or hot, a slight chill on your reds definitely will make the red drink a little smoother. And a chill means like something as subtle as maybe putting your bottle of wine in the fridge for 20 minutes, 30 minutes to get a slight coolness on it. That cooler temperature kind of levels out the harshness on the finish of a red wine that might have a little bit of a burn on the finish when it's too warm. And in some of the European markets, it's common that reds are served at a cooler temperature, for sure. Room temperature, real quick little fact about room temperature. We've talked about this in the past in other webinars, but, we're often told that we should be serving our reds at room temperature, right? Room temperature today is about 68 degrees, depending on how you like your environment. But room temperature was a term that was developed back in the 1800s or so, when the average temperature of a home pre-HVAC units and furnaces was probably in the 50s, low 60s.
Interesting.
Right? So that term stuck around for forever, where that's the ideal temperature to stabilize your whites and your reds without them, I'm going to use the word, brewing or cooking, because once red wine is in a hot environment, it starts to go through a almost like a secondary fermentation. It starts to cook again, if I'm not mistaken, Nathan, right? If it's too warm, the wine starts to boil again on its own, in simple terms. But if it's kept at a cooler temperature, it's stabilized. So room temperature back then was cellar temperature, which is in the high 50s, low 60s. So yeah, so we should definitely be drinking our reds at a cooler temperature.
That's great.
Fun fact, that's all.
A couple of comments came in. Love tandoori spice on lamb chops. I agree completely. Another comment. Spices sound amazing, Madena. So commendable for you. And wine, never a wrong choice. And then parentheses, well, mostly smiley face. So yeah, I agree with that too. You can't go wrong with most wines. But the wines we had tonight, I think, were amazing. Anybody in the audience that didn't get the wines, we'll also have them. And unless there's any more, I just wanted to say a few words. Do you guys have anything else you would like to address with the spices or with or Latoya with the organization before we go and before I say my few words?
Well,
sorry. I'll just call out one more time that there is a link for you to be able to donate independently to Women for Women. It's available in the chat. So you can donate directly and you can share with your friends and just continue to spread awareness.
Absolutely. And once again, the organization, Latoya, I've learned more about it since we started organizing this event, and it's truly inspiring, truly amazing. We're so happy to be part of this. We're so happy to work with you. And I hope on behalf of Foti and Nathan, I'm sure they agree, we could do more and more with you guys, because it is something that I personally believe in. I think we all believe in as a group.
Absolutely.
And it's when you were speaking, I already, I read all about it. We went through all this stuff, but when you were speaking, it truly gave me chills. And it's one of those things where everybody has to support. It's incredibly important, especially now, especially how things are. And I kind of wish we didn't need your organization, but we do. And I'm so glad that you guys are out there.
Mm-hmm.
And Madena, I've never been so hungry in my life. And the food you made, it looks amazing. The spices you created look amazing. I wish I could smell them right now. I wish I could eat it right now. But everybody out there, we will post this as a podcast and as a video. We're going to have links to Women for Women International. We're going to have links to Madena's website. We're going to have links for donation. We're going to have links to buy the spices. We're going to have links for everything. So please check it out. Watch this, share it with your friends. It's truly, this was a great event, and it's truly inspiring women like you two that make it all possible. And we will share everything. We will have it out there, and we want everybody out there watching, listening to please support. And we want to thank everybody so much for being part of it. We want to thank Madena for her time. We want to thank Latoya for her time. I want to thank Nathan, as always, for all the amazing knowledge of the wines. And Foti, my partner, thank you for all that you do. And we want to thank everybody out there so much. And we will see you guys next time. Please support, check out the video and the podcast.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Latoya, Madena. Can we also say a special thank you that she's a little camera shy, but we want to thank Karen. Karen,
can you do a pop-in? Can you do a pop-in, Karen?
Bomb the camera, because she was also a big part of putting this together. So thank you so much, Karen. Behind the scenes.
Karen, always thank you.
And also the wines are also available on Urban Wine Club's platform for those of you that actually want to buy more.
Yep, we'll link it all. We will have everything. So thank you again. Thanks, everybody out there. See you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bonsoir.
Bye-bye.